Oh Lord, somebody in the family just passed away and the drama begins. Why do people act out after somebody passes away? The drama is almost unbearable because everybody's hurt. There's a jumble of emotions going on. Arrangements have to be made. Nobody's agreeing with anybody else, and nobody grieves alike. So everybody's going to be in different stages of grieving. But today, I could talk about this for a week. But today, I want to deal with why people act out, why people that you may have gotten along with for years all of a sudden are acting foreign, and what the grief process has to do with that. So first, let's talk about the grief process. To understand the family dynamics after loss, we have to kind of get a grip on the 5 stages of grief. They are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Now, in the denial stage, you kind of feel numb. You know somebody's passed, but you don't want to believe it. You might feel the presence of that person or think you hear their voice. For the family dynamics, it may look as if the person who's in denial is just not interested in participating. That's a misunderstanding. The second stage is anger. Anger is completely natural after somebody dies. I just recently lost my daughter-in-law, and within a matter of hours, I went through throwing a tantrum to asking why to finally decide I was going to settle down and be quiet. It's hard to accept, and you want to get angry. So for the family dynamics, we'll talk later about how anger plays into that. Bargaining is the next step. Now, I know y'all, this don't make no sense to the mind that's thinking rationally, but we have to understand that when we've lost somebody, we're not necessarily in the mood to be rational. So we start bargaining with God, bargaining with ourselves. It's some sense of us thinking that we can have some kind of control over what's already happened. We want to believe that if we act in certain ways that we'll feel better. You know, it's common to find ourselves going over and over things that happened in the past and asking a lot of what-if questions and wishing we could go back and change things. If I would have this, then maybe that. Or, Lord, if you this, I'll that. Perfectly natural. The next stage is depression. Now, that's just the sadness that comes in, and generally we not want to get out of bed, or we don't want to do the things that naturally we usually do. It's a normal part. You're depressed. Period. The final stage in our list is acceptance. Now, when you go into acceptance, then you're kind of still caught up in the waves of this grief process. You've accepted it, but to you, it feels like nothing's ever going to be right again. But over time, the pain eases and it's possible to accept what had happened. Now, we'll never get over that, but we accept that it has happened. What we need to understand mostly in this situation, when everybody's acted out and acted up and out to lunch, is that no two people grieve alike. Aside from that, these stages of grief don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll be in and out of multiple different stages over time. And that's why after we lose somebody, you'll hear people say, well, I had a great day yesterday, but today I just can't even budge. It comes in waves, and you might be on an even keel for a number of days emotionally, and then one day, just out of the blue, you just can't quit crying. None of this happens at all in any given sequence. And you go through multiple different stages at multiple different times, and nobody's going to be on the same grief schedule. That's what I want you to remember as we move forward in this conversation. Now, this is what's not on that list I just read you. Let's say you lost a family member, and all of the families fighting, accusing you of this and that. Emotions are running high. What you have to understand in order to keep yourself calm and out of that fray is that none of those arguments are about you. None of it. It'll sound like they're saying it's about you. They're not agreeing with something you did or didn't do in the past, let alone with making the arrangements, okay? And everybody's at each other's throats. And people say some ugly stuff. You could have an auntie that you have loved for 30, 40 years. You all always get along. She's your favorite aunt. And in the middle of the loss, she'll say or do something that'll throw you back against the wall. Boy, I didn't know she was like that. Man, I can't believe I've known her this many years. So let's just say there's a piece of jewelry that the deceased had, and she's just driving it home, adamant that she gets that piece of jewelry. Now, to you, it looks like she's being greedy. She's being totally unreasonable. But what you don't see behind the scenes is what type of meaning is this auntie attaching to that particular piece of jewelry. Now, understand me, I'm not asking you to think it's reasonable. It may seem unreasonable. It may be unreasonable, but we're missing the point. There's something that individual is attaching, that in this situation that the auntie's attaching some emotional meaning to that piece of jewelry. Now, you're dealing with, all you're seeing is she's being greedy. We have to give each other some room here. If you've known this auntie for 30, 40, 50 years, and in that time you've never seen this side of her, then you owe it to yourself and the family dynamic to give her a pass on this. Understand that it's not like something awful's coming out of her character, greediness, and you never saw it before. So you can't hold grudges against her because of that. Now, I'm not saying that this apparently unreasonable position she's taking is right. And you will have to figure out, after emotions are all past, how to address that matter. Maybe you should ask her, wow, why is that? What is it about that piece of jewelry? Can you tell me about that? That could be healing to her to talk it out. And as she talks that out with you, she might recognize that she's being unreasonable. But don't just write off 30, 40, 50 years of a relationship with somebody in the family because they're acting like this in the middle of grief. That's number one. Number two, this dynamic is definitely going to come to the fore. Story time. I lost my mother-in-law. Now, that was a really tough life for her kids. She had gone to prison early on. In the case of my ex-husband, her mother raised the kids while she was in prison, and she was a mean lady. I mean, he dealt with some actual physical abuse at the hands of his grandmother. So imagine what his mother must have gone through being raised by that woman, but that's a whole different video. Maybe I'll do that next. Anyway, in the middle of losing, she's in the hospital. She's not going to make it through this bout of cancer. And one of his sisters wanted to go off on their mother. His position at that time was, No, this woman's getting ready to die. You getting ready to unload on her so you'll feel better? He was against it. Now, he had already made peace with his past and peace with his mother, and they were beginning to get along. He had done some of the work so that her loss, while it was really hard on him, I'll tell you that story probably next. While it was really hard on him, he had gotten some closure. Now, I told you this story as an example of how old, undiscussed, deeply buried personal issues individuals have with the decedent will come to the fore. It could be they've been stewing on this for 40 years. We don't know. But all of a sudden, in the middle of this grief, the anger has them coming out and pointing fingers and being accusatory. And I didn't like this, and you did this, and you did that. And then that's when the fight starts. Everybody's at each other's throats. In one recent example that I went to, and the thing that drove me to even do this video was I watched a video of somebody that I deeply care about who recently lost a family member, and they were totally bewildered. It broke my heart in this video for seeing this person so bewildered because the family member was saying terrible stuff about the person they lost. And he's blaming himself because they had been perceiving for years that whatever they disliked about the decedent was his fault. You orchestrated this, and they didn't know this woman at all. That's her family, and they didn't know that woman deeply. And he took the time to explain to them her perspective on the matter, so that it was totally different from what they were throwing at him. And in this situation, in the anger dynamic, in the family argument thing, you have to accept that it ain't about you. Their internal projections, meaning that they are tore up inside and all of that rot and stuff that they've been stuffing, they are projecting out to others as if it's the others who are feeling that. Weird dynamic, unreasonable, I get it, but it's real. Projection is going to happen. And so now in the video that I watched, the guy was just hurt. He was so hurt. So hurt, and stood to have lost these relationships with these people forever. What I need you to do in the middle of that is understand, number one, maybe they're in the anger stage. Number two, the decedent's passing is bringing up a lot of unresolved issues that, most importantly, have absolutely nothing to do with you. It is not your responsibility, but it's going to be hard for you in the face of that blowback to look at it from this rational viewpoint because it gets personal. I get it. It gets personal. Okay? And so what I want you to do in a situation where that's going on, I need you to kind of step back, take a deep breath, and tell yourself, nope. Not going there today. Got enough to deal with. You leave the room if you have to, figuratively or actually, and remove yourself from all of that emotion, understanding that this person is in the throes of grief. And the anger and the blaming and the finger pointing and the misunderstanding and the regurgitating decades of unresolved issues is their way of coping in the moment, as wrong as it is. And understanding that helps you to not take it personally. You can remove yourself emotionally from that. And if they have to be involved in the arrangements, then nope, we ain't talking about that today. We're going to have to deal with that when we can talk about it on less emotional grounds. So much of this that's going on with these family dynamics, man, is all about different stages of the grief process, unresolved issues from the past, projecting that in the moment out of anger, and You just have to understand that while they're in that condition, while they are in that grief, while they are acting out, may not be the time to try to talk reason to somebody. Sometimes you have to let them blow off steam and then address whatever business has to be addressed down the line. Now, I'm tempted to say this because of the situation that led me to this video. I'm tempted to say that if you are the person who has been there for that person, the decedent, and you are the one that have been there with them and taking care of them in their sickness, or had a strong relationship with them, or saw them on a daily basis, loved and had a great relationship with this person, whether you had a great relationship or not, even if you were the caregiver and you were the one that was there, that on a day-to-day basis, everybody's going to want to have a say in the arrangement. Everybody's going to want to have a say in the estate. Everybody's going to want to have a say. I'm going to protect myself here and just tell you, maybe you're going to have to consider the fact that you're the one that was there. And with all of the confusion, if you just need to get through this yourself and get these arrangements made, then maybe you need to just ignore the voices. I could be wrong. I'm just saying. If you're the one that was there, and say you were there as they were sick, you were there when they passed, and you were there on a daily basis, maybe other voices have to be shut out so that you can get through this and handle the arrangements. I hope that this was helpful for you. Look, if you're going through this right now and you are dealing with the loss of somebody, I want you to give yourself a break. I want you to be kind to yourself. I want you to recognize the different stages of grief and know when you're coming in and coming out of them. Mostly, I want you to not fight that. Don't fight the grief. If it comes in and you have a bad day, you have a bad day. Don't spend that day feeling guilty, feeling bad, or beating yourself up because of it. Okay? It's going to come in waves. It's going to come in waves. You have to ride those waves out. But if you try to stuff that grief, it's not going to do you any good, because it's just like I tell you about different developmental levels as we grow up. You can't skip that. I don't want it to make you sick because you're internalizing that. And journal if you don't have anybody else to talk to. I'm offering a free complimentary breakthrough session. Feel free to go to my website and schedule your free 30-minute session, and we'll talk about what your goals are, what your challenges are. Maybe I'll give you a couple of tools to deal with that, and we'll discuss whether or not we could be a good partnership to address some of your challenges together. Always remember, your greatest power is realizing the truth of who you are. Know that truth. Hey, if you like what you see here today, please subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so that you know when we upload, and like and share the video. Thanks.